So, good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the grand finale of the Berlin Foreign Policy Forum this year, our Körber Global Leaders Dialogue with Pedro Sánchez, the Prime Minister of Spain. And what we will be doing in the next 30 minutes or so is we will try to talk about some of the most pressing issues that the EU has been facing as of late, from the COVID-19 pandemic to migration, to populism, and to Europe's role on the global stage. Prime Minister, a very warm welcome to you. We're thrilled to have you. It's a great honor. Great to have you live from Madrid, and as time is of the essence today, let me turn it over right away to you for some introductory remarks. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Let me thank the Körber-Stiftung for inviting me to this Berlin Foreign Policy Forum. I think it is an excellent opportunity to get into a debate about fundamental questions with people from different countries and different backgrounds, with experts in international relations and with young students eager to ask questions. We're facing very hard times, and I would like to remind all the victims that COVID-19 is living around the world. Our thoughts must be with them and their families. There are also thousands of people in the whole world, but also in Europe, who are now struggling due to the economic crisis brought by the pandemic, people who lost their jobs, people who are expecting us to solve their problems. They must feel that the European Union is with them. And we must prove them that Europe is resilient and generous and has the tools to overcome the situation. That is what we have to achieve this time as well. In fact, it's already being achieved with the historic agreement we reached in July with the creation of the next generation European Union, an unprecedented amount of resources to be distributed among member states. Such a decision was unthinkable a few months earlier. We have to congratulate ourselves for the statesmanship vision of all European leaders, including Chancellor Merkel, for having lived up to what history demanded of us. Nevertheless, this is just a first step. Europe needs to keep moving forward in order to emerge after the pandemic, not the same as it was before, but transform it and improve it. The Europe to come must be green, digitalized, cohesive, and feminist. This horrible year 2020, which will be recalled in history for the many lives lost and for the tragic economic crisis caused by the pandemic, must also be a turning point in creating the Europe of the future. In this sense, the European project is more necessary than ever to avoid any hint of parallelism between this crisis of 2020 and the great crisis of the late 1920, which led to the Second World War. We need to emerge stronger so that we can provide our children a better life in a more sustainable world. That is why the Recovery Fund is called Next Generation European Union, because it is about sustainable development, because it is about leaving no one behind. In this global crisis, Europe has to become an increasingly attractive project and strengthen its role. And that can only be done in one way: leading global processes such as multilateralism or the 2030 Agenda. When it comes to the Sustainable Development Goals, we must lead by example. Lead by example. The more we delve into the values in which we believe, the higher returns we will obtain. That doesn't mean being naive. In our relations with, for example, the United States, Europe doesn't need to go back to its comfort zone, but to have to work on a relationship which is key as an equal partner, as a reliable one, also trying to reinforce the compliance with the principles that we share and trying to draw the US more and more in our direction in this sense. For instance, with China, it is more complex because China is today a systemic country. And for us, it is indeed a systemic adversary. Our systems are diametrically opposed in many points. And here I would like to underline the issue of human rights. However, at the same time, our relationship with China must be strategic because China for us is a systemic adversary, but not a strategic one. We can be partners in many issues that we can have a positive impact on our societies. Europe must be brave and smart. We have to avoid both sides of the pendulum in our thinking. Neither we live in an ideal situation, nor we already missed a train of modernization compared to or with the United States and China. Neither idea is entirely true. We do not have to go from excessive complacency to depression. We can still do a lot, not just for ourselves, but for the whole world. But one thing is true. The more united we are, the more we can, because we certainly are stronger together. That is why, in order to keep the European project alive and strengthen its role in the world, I imagine a European Union which is more digital, greener, with greater territorial and social cohesion, that keeps moving relentlessly towards real gender equality, that reinforces its strategic autonomy within an open system, that firmly supports multilateralism and attracts others to it, that moves towards greater economic and monetary integrations, that face the migratory phenomenon with solidarity and humanity, in addition to responsibility, not taking steps backwards with international borders, which we believed are already overcome, that keeps its doors open towards enlargement for those states that meet the requirements, and that takes special care of its foreign policy, in particular with its neighbors in the East and in the South, but also with the rest of the world, especially Africa, Asia, and Latin America, which is a crucial region for Spain. Only by fulfilling these premises will the European Union emerge from this crisis stronger than before. We have already started the process because we have managed to put in motion very powerful and formally non-existent mechanisms, such as Next Generation European Union, but we have to continue along this line. Our citizens need it, and we must provide it. So many thanks for this invitation. I'm eager to start this conversation with you and with the rest of the colleagues. Many thanks for your invitation.
Prime Minister, thank you very much. You said we have to be brave and smart. I really like that. And I wanted us to start on the question of European recovery, really, and look towards the next year already. The Economist just wrote a couple of days ago, and here I'm quoting, in 2021, EU politicians will learn that agreeing to borrow the money was the easy bit. Agreeing how to spend it will be much harder. And of course, they've been talking about the Next Generation EU plan. So do you agree with that analysis? Do you think that the real litmus test for the EU is still ahead?
Well, absolutely. I think that the challenge that we have to absorb these resources and to use these resources efficiently in a manner that we increase our economic potentiality, productivity, and all these economic figures that indicates the stronger recovery in our country and in the continent is crucial. I do believe that this pandemic has accelerated many transitions that we were imagining in the midterm, and that nowadays became very urgent in the short term. Let me explain. For instance, the ecological transition, the digital transition. I do believe that this pandemic has accelerated the big change that we are facing, and because of that, it's really important what we achieved last July to create a common response at the European level, because it's true that this crisis, that this pandemic, in the economic and social side, challenge the idea of the single market. And because we need to strengthen the single market, one of the biggest achievements in the European Union integration, it is crucial to have, of course, a common response. So we have this fiscal policy that we are aligning our policies in each member state on ecological transition, digital transition. It is also through an unprecedented response on monetary policy from the ECB side. And also it is very, very interesting, the dynamic that the leaders of the different member states, we were implementing since the beginning of the pandemic. I remember that in the beginning of the pandemic, each country gave a singular response to the pandemic. We closed our frontiers, we managed, or we decided to give a national, so to say, response to this
Not
pandemic.
much solidarity there, well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But nowadays, it is true that we are cooperating. We are having European councils every 2 weeks, only focusing on the pandemic. How can we give a common response on the health side of this emergency, of this pandemic? For instance, with the joint purchase or on health material and equipment, on developing and implementing rapid tests, on mutual recognitions and assistance to use those tests, and on joint approach to vaccines. So my impression, the reality is that we are integrating not only the decision-making process at the European level, but also sharing knowledge and of course, policies in order to respond effectively to this pandemic on these 3 dimensions.
Right. I guess that's, if I may interrupt you, Prime Minister, I guess that's the good news. At the same time, if we look at the current dynamics and the Hungarian and the Polish veto, that's not necessarily a great testimony to solidarity in the European Union. What does that mean for Spain, and what does that mean for the EU in total?
Well, I think that this issue of rule of law has been debated in the European Parliament and also the European Council and also in different governments in different member states since the 2016. So this is a long debate that we have been promoting and discussing this dialogue, and of course, if you have rights, you have also duties, and it is indeed very important to defend the rule of law, which is of course one of the key principles, and is in the heart of the European Union project. So I do believe that we are going to reach an agreement and to deblock, so to say, the current situation that we are facing regarding the MFF and, of course, the recovery plan approved by different member states.
So you're not concerned that we'll end up in a situation of total blockade and no monies will be able to be released?
I hope that we are going to, and I'm confident that we are going to reach that agreement. I don't see any other option. Really, I think that the situation is dramatic on the health side, of course, on the economic and social side, across Europe, especially in those countries. I remember that in Poland, different trade unions organization has stated the urgency for having resources and to approve the plan, and I'm sure that we are going to, I'm confident that we're going to reach that agreement before the end of the year.
Fingers crossed. Money is always a tough issue at the EU, and so is foreign policy, Prime Minister. I wanted to move to another issue. Last week, we witnessed this little spat between the French President Macron and the German Minister of Defense, who just spoke at the forum earlier on about the definition of European sovereignty and what European sovereignty actually entails. And the German Minister of Defense says European sovereignty without the EU, without the US is actually an illusion. And President Macron says this is a historic misinterpretation. So my question to you is, are you with the German Minister of Defense or are you with the French President?
Well, I think that this pandemic has many lessons to learn, especially in the European Union. First of all, that we are stronger together. Secondly, that we have a great opportunity after the US elections to reestablish a very positive agenda with the new US administration. I always stated before the US elections that it's a pity that the Trump administration considered the European Union as an enemy and not as an ally. So I think that this is a great opportunity in order to change and to reestablish this very important transatlantic relation. And finally, I'm very supportive to the idea of multilateralism. I do believe that the European Union itself is an expression of multilateralism, because in the end, in the European Council or in the European Parliament, there are many countries or many governments representing different political options and different national interests. So I think that we need to strengthen multilateralism. This pandemic has shown us the importance of and the need to strengthen multilateralism. And for that, I think it's crucial, it's key to have, let's say, the understanding between two big actors in international relations, such as the European Union and the US administration.
Thank you. So are you with the German Minister of Defense or with the French President?
I would say that I'm with this German vision of international relations.
Okay, duly noted. Prime Minister, we have promised our viewers, as always, to also take in as many questions from the audience as possible. So I will start with another question that really pertains to the whole field of the EU's external relations. And I'll read it out to you. Is the EU able to become a capable actor in foreign and security policy with unanimity?
Very difficult. Very difficult. I think that when we speak about enlargement, we have had very important and very tough discussions in the European Council regarding the enlargement. It is also true that a French vision on if we enlarge the European Union to a higher number of member states, it is also true that we need to review the way we decide and the decision-making process. And for that, if we want to go further and move on in this idea of federalism, which of course I'm open and I always advocated, I think that we need from unanimity to a majority in many of these decisions. Mm-hmm.
And do you see this happening in our lifetime, moving from unanimity to qualified majority system?
Well, let me put it in this domestic, let's say, vision. In Spain, as in Germany, we have regional governments. We have to, in order to face this pandemic, we need to get majorities among the regional governments. We have 17 regional governments plus 2 autonomous cities in the north of Africa, and with unanimity would be impossible, absolutely impossible to react in an efficient manner to this pandemic. So I do believe that we need to get or to go to this qualified majority, and of course I will always advocate for this vision of the European Union integration.
We learned you call yourself a militant pro-European. So in that vein, here's another question, Prime Minister, from I think a German viewer that sounds pretty much like a German question, and it has to do again with the issue of the recovery fund. I'll read it out to you. Is the EU recovery fund a first step towards a transfer union? And how would you convince skeptical Germans of the value and need of common debt in the EU?
Well, first of all, I think that this pandemic give a great opportunity to the European Union to, let's say, reaffirm its values. For instance, if you speak with other leaders of other regions outside the European Union, they don't have a welfare state, they don't have public health. So this welfare state that we have in Spain, in Europe, this, let's say, redistribution policies that we have in many issues, education, health system, and so on and so forth, is crucial in order to let's say, face this huge challenge of the pandemic. When we speak about transitions, ecological transition, digital transition, it is also true that the importance is to give an inclusive approach and perspective to this transition, because these transitions are going to happen with or without the engagement of public institutions. So therefore, the political willingness is crucial in order to give this inclusive perspective to these huge transitions that are going to touch dramatically our labor market, regions, opportunities in different regions, and so on and so forth. So I think that in this new international relations scenario, where we have, let's say, great actors such as China, the US, India, Africa, and others, Russia, it is really, really important to have a stronger European Union. And this stronger European Union means to face in an inclusive manner these transitions, to be the leaders on this ecological transition and digital transition, and of course, in order to do so and to achieve so, to have a common response. And for that, it is important to remember that this recovery fund means investments, public investments, and therefore private investments, but also reforms. And we need to face and achieve those reforms on labor market, on the energy sector, on the educational system, on the vocational training system, and so on and so forth. Of course, the public administration. And these are the biggest challenges that we have in the European Union. Of course, it's difficult. Why? Because if you see different governments among the member states, we have coalitions, we have very fragmented national parliaments in every single country of the European Union, but this is democracy. We have to let's say, to open dialogues with different political parties, to sum up and build up majorities in order to face those reforms. And I'm confident that in the next 5-6 years, we're going to be able to make this big step in order to, let's say, to achieve those challenges that we have on the economic and social dimension of the future.
Okay. I think the next question, which comes from your own country, from Spain, fits in nicely here. And again, I'll read it out to you, Prime Minister. Hi, President of the government Sanchez. I am a Spanish student, very concerned about the future of work and rising unemployment in Spain. How can Spain best utilize the next generation EU funds to prepare our youth and mid-career workers for the future of work? And what investments and policy changes will be needed to be ready for a digital future?
I would respond because it is indeed a very extensive question, but I will focus on education, especially on vocational training. I would answer this student that if you see or are going to be the jobs that the market is going to ask to our youngest generations are, let's say, medium qualified, technical qualified. So, and in this specific, let's say, profile of qualification, Spain is not doing very well. We have many students on the university, which of course is very good, very positive, but on the intermediate, let's say, qualification, we are behind the European average. And that is why the Spanish government is going to pass a new law on vocational training in order to give the importance to this, let's say, part of our educational system.
Thank you very much for being so concise. I think we have time for probably one more question, and I think we cannot end this intriguing conversation without touching on the issue of migration. And here's a question from Kai Brinkmann, one of our viewers, and he asks, what are key shortfalls and perspectives for migration and solutions in that respect? How can the EU deal with this very difficult problem?
Very, very difficult problem, and it's going to be one of the biggest questions and challenges, especially after the pandemic, because of the economic consequences in Africa, Latin America, and other countries around the European Union. I would say that my impression when we speak on this in the European Council is that in many occasions we only see the perspective of the security dimension of migration, which of course is necessary, it's important, because we have to send a clear message to smugglers that we are going to go, against them. But it's also important to have the international dimension, and that is why I always stated that it's really important to have the best dialogue with the countries of origin, countries of transit. So the international dimension is crucial in order to face effectively this challenge of migration. Secondly, I think it's important not only responsibility but also solidarity among member states. And this is, of course, one of the biggest questions to answer in the European Council. We be clear, we didn't manage to solve this equilibrium between responsibility and solidarity. But and of course, I think it's important also to say, okay, we are not going to accept an irregular, illegal migration, but we are open and eager to create legal, let's say, migration policies in order to respond, of course, to this reality that we are witnessing in Africa and in other parts of the world. So I think this is one of the biggest challenges that we have inside the European Union, and of course it's going to be one of the biggest, let's say, debates around the world, especially after the pandemic. But of course, this humanistic approach to migration is crucial in order also to, let's say, to reivindicate the European values, which are aligned, of course, with the, let's say, the French Revolution and the humanitarian perspective that always define our common project, which is the European Union.
It certainly is, Prime Minister. I have a very last question for you. It's a very serious one. Last week, Spain defeated Germany 6-0 in soccer. I think that was the worst defeat in human memory. Don't you think that 3-0 would have been enough? And I wanted to ask you if you could comment on this issue.
Well, I think that it was really tough. I was watching the match, and I thought 3-0 was enough. It was okay. More it was, but anyway, we'll have other matches, Germany and Spain, and well, soccer is one of the best sports, very followed among Germans and among Spaniards, and well, we'll see what happens in the future.
Let's see what happens in the future. Prime Minister, thank you very much. This was extremely interesting. It was great to have you on the Berlin Foreign Policy Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining this Körber Global Leaders Dialogue. We're almost at the end of this Berlin Forum, but not quite. So for one more time, I will turn it over to Thomas Paulson for some final words of wisdom.
Thank you, Nora. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we have almost reached the end of a long day. Thank you very much for all your contributions and for making this first digital Berlin Foreign Policy Forum to bringing it to life. We will conclude this forum with a special session in cooperation with the Aspen Institute on the question of a new global digital order. And Eric Schmidt, the chair of the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence and former executive chairman and CEO of Google, will join this discussion. So stay in the live stream or join us as a participant on our virtual conference platform. Now give me 2 more minutes to say a few words of thanks. First of all, I would like to thank the German Federal Foreign Office, in particular the policy planning staff, for the excellent cooperation. Then I would like to thank our partners, our cooperation partners, the Pew Research Center, the German Marshall Fund, the Aspen Institute, and our media partners, the Spiegel, the Frankfurter Allgemeine, der Tagesspiegel, Deutsche Welle, EU Observer, and Le Monde Diplomatique. But most importantly, the greatest thanks goes to the wonderful team of the International Affairs Department of Körber-Stiftung, led by Nora Müller, and the core team of the Berlin Foreign Policy Forum. Liana Fix, Theresa Kirch, Leonie Stamm, Anna Pröhl, Denise Ersoy, Leslie Schübel, and Fabian Scherf. You hear the applause. Without the support of many further colleagues in Berlin and in Hamburg, this hybrid Berlin Forum would not have been possible. So thank you all very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that next year we will be able to welcome you in Berlin in 2021 all again back in person, in reality. Until then, I would like to say take care, stay healthy, see you next year, and then we will be able to celebrate the 10th anniversary of this wonderful forum.